You are listening to The Real Men Feel Show with your hosts, Andy Grant and Appio Hunter. Real Men Feel encourages men to allow and express all of their emotions. Despite what you may have been taught, all emotions do serve you. Real Men Feel is committed to engaging in discussions that most men aren't having, but you don't need to be a man to join us. The Real Men Feel Show is produced live each Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern for your growth and enjoyment. Listen to us on podcast platforms including iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, and Stitcher. You can also watch the show on YouTube by visiting realmenfeel.org/YouTube. Come back often and feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or subscribe on iTunes by visiting realmenfeel.org/iTunes. You can follow us on Twitter at realmenfeelorg and on Facebook, facebook.com/realmenfeelshow. All links mentioned in each episode are in the show notes found on the blog at realmenfeel.org. Show your support for Real Men Feel by shopping at realmenfeel.org/swag, by visiting digitaltipjar.com/realmenfeel, or even text us a tip. You can show some love for Real Men Feel by texting Real Men Feel, that's all one word, to 504-226-5306. You'll receive a link back to complete your tip and choose the amount. This is a weekly program, and your reviews, comments, feedback, and participation are welcome during the live show and anytime in our Facebook group, on Twitter, or at realmenfeel.org. Now, let's dive into this week's show. Hello, and welcome to another edition of Real Men Feel. This is your host, Andy Grant. My co-host, Appio Hunter, cannot make it with us today. But be that as it may, we are brought to you by the good folks at the Good Men Project. And again, I'm so excited to be affiliated with them because there really is no better alignment that I could imagine for Real Men Feel. We are both all about conversations that most men aren't having and really need to have. And today is no exception. My guest today is Dawn Westmoreland. She's an HR consultant, speaker, author, and podcaster focused on bullying and discrimination. She uses her 27 years experience in HR to help attorneys, mental health professionals, spiritual and religious leaders, employers, and employees with solutions to bullying and discrimination. And when I was first introduced to Dawn, I've heard of, usually men get the one end of bullying is all I hear about it. Like, men are the bullies of the workplace and men are horrible and, it's all kind of their fault. But she told me something, you told me, Dawn, that nearly as many men as women experience bullying and discrimination in the workplace.
Yeah, that's true, Andy. And I'd like to thank you for being on the show. And I'm a big supporter of the Good Men Project, too. Yeah, men do get bullied almost as much. And, I like to give credit where credit is due. The Workplace Bullying Institute put out some studies, did some research, and put out some, poll information about men almost being bullied as much as women. And I can tell you some of the worst bullies I've ever experienced were women.
Wow. So that was another question. So if it's equal that they can both be victimized by bullying and discrimination, is it just as likely that men and women are bullies in the workplace as well?
Yeah. People can abuse their power because they're a supervisor or manager, or they could have a narcissistic personality and be a coworker. So, yeah, we have all kind of people out there with different personalities, and some of them really enjoy having power over other people and mistreating them. They may not have empathy for the person. And oftentimes, too, and this is the Workplace Bullying Institute's comments, not my own, is a lot of the people who are bullied are considered kind and compassionate people, and they have empathy. They want to get along, but sometimes bullies see them as weaklings, and they go ahead and they target them.
So the sort of same is the same personality type, or I don't even have to call it I'll call it a flaw for lack of a better term, but the same kind of things that would make a childhood bully, seek someone who's weak and be on the attack. That trait can just last all the way through adulthood.
It really can, because, as a child, I was bullied myself. I had been sexually abused as a child for many years. And so I had absolutely zero confidence in myself. And so I put out that vibe or that energy that, I was very victimized. And I was bullied quite a lot as a child. and it didn't feel good. So, I grew up in kind of an overachiever. Some people, go south, and I kind of went north in the sense that, I became overachieving, collecting degrees, always trying to prove myself. And then, as I did gain confidence, because I'm retired from the Air Force and I spent 20 years in the Air Force. And as you said, Andy, I do have 27 years experience in human resources. I became more empowered. I become stronger. I become resilient. And then I spoke up, and I spoke up about illegal hiring practices in my former government job. And then I was bullied there. But at that time, it was not because I was weak. It was because I turned in a bunch of people for illegal practices, and that's why I was bullied then.
So as an adult, your bullying happened after you spoke up. It wasn't something that, it wasn't the reason you spoke up.
Well, it was the reason why I spoke up, because, I was working in the federal government, and with the background in human resources, I knew that the management was committing or performing prohibited personnel practices. And I'll explain that. If anybody's familiar with federal government, is I was seeing what nepotism was going on, hiring of family and friends by management. That's illegal in the federal government. It happens all the time, and people don't know what to do about it. And then I saw where, equal peers, one person would get trained for some kind of role, and they get a promotion later on, and that's illegal. That's a prohibited personnel practice, for example, because it gives one person advantage. So I remember a lot of people following me to the bathroom, mostly women, and they would pull me aside and they said, "Dawn, is this illegal?" And I'm like, "Yes, it is." And they're like, "What are you going to do about it?" And I'm like, "Well, what are you going to do about it?" And so I did speak up. I had a problem with it. The last former job that I had, I've been an entrepreneur probably for, I guess, 5, going on 6 years, work for myself. But I remember one of the first things that I noticed in this job was there were only 5 Black employees out of 500 employees. And I knew something was really wrong. And so, yeah, I spoke up, and I received a lot of bullying, a lot of retaliation, a lot of harassment.
Hmm. Um, and is there an official definition or differentiation between bullying, harassment, discrimination? Or are there legal terms that make them different, or is it all kind of come down to the same thing? Or how would you explain that?
Well, bullying could be, just ignoring somebody, not, withholding information from them, mistreating them. I mean, it could be physical, it could be mental, it could be laughing at them when they walk by in the cafeteria, for example. Where discrimination, there's different, what they call protected classes. And if you were to go to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission website, and I'll give you that website, it's real simple. It's EEOC.gov. It breaks down the different discrimination protected classes. We're talking about sexual harassment, pregnancy discrimination, LGBT, disability, age discrimination, which is 40 years and older, and, gender, and it has more. So that's, discrimination. So bullying in the workplace, unfortunately, is not illegal. However, discrimination is. And what I know to be true, Andy, is that a lot of times when people bully, they also discriminate against that person. And so if you meet the guidelines, and you can go to the website I just provided, and you can also reach out to a counselor by getting a hold of that website and call, and you can get more clarification on it. So if you're being discriminated, for example, once I spoke out, I have disabilities that are very invisible. I mean, you would know I'm disabled, and I was denied a medical reasonable accommodation, and this happens all the time, So I filed a disability discrimination case, and then I received retaliation, bad appraisals. They tried to fire me. And so this happens. I mean, this isn't just something that happened to me. This happens to other people too in the federal government. But even in the private sector, the same rules apply with discrimination. So if somebody, they allege discrimination charges with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, as a mouthful, or the state level representative agency, and they get any kind of retaliation, they have to respond in 45 days with documented proof, substantiated proof that they've been discriminated. And then most times in the end, and I'm not a lawyer, but I am an HR consultant, I do work with attorneys. Most of the time when there's a settlement or a hearing later on with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, is the retaliation where people get settlement. Did that help you?
Yeah, no, it really did a lot because, yeah, so bullying is kind of just being mean, being a jerk,
Yeah,
right? It's,
yeah.
and discrimination is truly breaking laws that are set up to protect people.
Right. And I want you to know there's some very good people out there, and I'm familiar with in different states that they're trying to get laws passed to stop bullying in the workplace. I mean, to make it actually illegal. And I know that's got to be a great opportunity to spell out what is bullying, because bullying can be so subtle. You know, it could be as simple as you walk in to a room and everybody ignores you, you know, that could be bullying.
Right. Yeah. And when it gets to defining it, that's got to be one of the toughest things to decide. Is something coincidence? Am I taking things too personally, or am I really being bullied? And are people plotting against me, or am I paranoid? Or it's got to get tough to deal with that. To go to work every day and not sure if you're being bullied, or or if you're
Yeah.
if you're being bullied and kind of gotten used to it, and you just put up with it, like when it blurs, when it crossed the line and becomes something illegal, I bet most people aren't aware of it.
Well, that's why I decided, to get out there and do advocacy. I realized, my own experience, and we've talked before. I shared, after 18 months, even as a strong woman who served in the Air Force and grew up with 7 brothers and stepbrothers, I became tired. I was working 18-hour days, working my regular job, writing up my cases. I wrote up my cases. It was all combined at the end. And I was tired. I was broken. I was tired of the harassment. And after 18 months, I passed out the first time. Second time I passed out, they finally said, we think it might be a good idea for you to spend a little time in the mental health ward. And by that time, Andy, I didn't care. I was like, I just wanted to feel safe. And I wanted a break. I wanted a break from harassment. I mean, I've worked with people that have been in the Marines, and they've told me, these are clients, when I worked one-on-one with employees, oh, you can't break me. I can never be broken. 4 months later, they're calling me crying. And everybody has a breaking point. Everybody, and after a matter of time and long-term harassment, everybody can, be broken or just reduced to feeling victimized. And I felt victimized. And short story is, I looked in the metal mirror the third day when I was allowed to have a shower, and I had a hate fest with myself, and I said, oh no, you've never been a victim. You're choosing to be a victim, and you're your own worst bully. And, that was the epiphany I had. And it didn't happen overnight. I had to do a lot of personal growth, and I had a mentor to help me move forward. And I think anybody who's being bullied, they've got to have a support team. They've got to have somebody believing in them, supporting them, helping them.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned being bullied as a child, and
Mm-hmm.
then the bullying experience in the job. And you mentioned a military career. So did you experience bullying in the military as well?
Yeah, I went in 1985, and I got out in 2005. When I went in 85, there were 11% women. When I got out, it was 22%. And, there was bullying, definitely abuse of power. I guess many of us have heard that saying, you want to know how somebody acts, give them power, give them authority, and see how they act. So, there was 2 severe bullying incidences in my career field, and led to major depression. I was bullied. I won't go into all the great details, but bullying is bullying, and things were so bad, and I was harassed for so long that I ended up having major depression. I didn't have a total meltdown, but I was removed from my position and moved into another one. And there's a lot of bullying. A lot of military people reach out to me because and it's funny because you can go through the proper chains of, reach out to the supervisor or whoever they tell you to. But I've also noticed that sometimes, I'm not saying the military is all this way, but sometimes things get swept under the rug because they just don't want to deal with it. They tell you toughen up. And the craziest thing is that if you have a child in the military, is a mother, father, a loved one sometimes has more power than you do. And I remember my mother reaching out to the 2-star general, telling him, what are you going to do about my daughter's problem? Although I spent a year of standing up for myself. and and had all the right documentation, everything dragged out. But one letter from my mother, isn't that crazy? My mother saying, "What are you going to do about my daughter's situation?" Because things were horrific and I was getting death threats and stuff like that. And he responded so quickly because they don't want public media. So, yeah, my mother was very powerful in that incident.
I mean, that makes a twisted bit of sense to me, even that, because I go back to thinking of kids and, the biggest bully in the neighborhood, as soon as a parent showed up, "Hey, what are you doing?" "Oh, nothing, everything's fine here." And they turn into Eddie Haskell or something, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's funny that even, as the most powerful man in charge of things, but when confronted with a mother's energy, like, "Oh, I'm sorry. What can I do for you?"
Yeah, mothers are powerful.
Yeah. That should be a book.
Ah! There you go.
You mentioned a term earlier that I want to go back to. I think you said
Sure.
a hate fest.
Yes.
So I don't love that people have them, but I love when I hear some new way that people describe how they treat themselves. Could you explain what your hate fest encompassed?
Well, you and I talked about this before, and I slipped and I didn't say metal mirror because, they're not going to have a glass mirror in the mental health ward. And I remember saying mental mirror. And oh my gosh, I don't think I slipped. I think I really meant that because it was the first time in 3 days I got to see myself in a mirror before I got a shower. Because I was on all this heavy medication for anxiety, depression, I mean, I wouldn't go as far as to say I was suicidal, but I was in bad shape. And so I'm looking at myself, and I don't even look like myself. And I even have pictures. I kept pictures just so I could look back at them one day to see how far I've come. But my skin looks yellow. I have purple triangles under my eyes. And I look at myself, and I'm like, "I hate you. I hate you. I hate how weak you've become. You've always been tough. You've always been, strong. Look at you. You're disgusting. I hate you." We had that horrible hate fest going on, and I don't know what happened. I softened up because I realized, my God, the psychiatrist that came in said most people that experienced the level of harassment and the things that happened to me would have killed themselves or had a complete total breakdown. And I wouldn't say that's the part that gave me the epiphany, but I think it did assist. I'm like, yeah, I have been through a lot. And it really doesn't matter what you've been through. I mean, I've had people come up to me and say, "Oh, it's the worst day of my life. My boss gave me a dirty look." And I kind of, inside I laugh and I'm like, "Oh, that'd be a good day for me." But I get it. I understand where they're coming from. So after looking at myself, I said, "Damn it, I'm ready to get out of here." All right, I get it. And Andy was like a voice in my head said, "You're meant to go through this. You're meant to experience this. You're meant to overcome to help other people." And I'm like, am I hearing things? I mean, I know I'm not on medication that would make me hallucinate, but I really had a strong feeling of it, and I realized that's the truth. That is what I know to be true, that I had to experience this because it's like, if people believe in going to AA meeting, Alcoholics Anonymous, are you going to listen to a person who's been in the mud and survived and now they're a thriver? He's a thriver now. Well, I've been through a lot of bullying all my life. I have felt the victimhood, and I've always been a very sensitive person. Today, I'm a very sensitive person, but a very resilient one. Mm. So, yeah, I had the aha moment. You don't have to be a victim. And when I had that, I told the psychiatrist I'm ready to go. And they're like, "Well, we got to sit down and have a little interdisciplinary meeting." And they're like, "Whoa." After they talked to me, and I said, "Okay." I had a little pity party, and I was tired. And 18 months of fighting, standing up for myself, spending way too much time writing up my own cases. But I handed over in complete case to my attorney, and that was what landed me in the mental health ward, is working too much and definitely neglecting my self-care. I was horrible at it.
Hmm. So the outcome of the hate fest was the epiphany, and so that's when you really made the conscious decision to start focusing on bullying and supporting people, and this was your calling?
I would not only call it my calling, I would call it my soul's purpose. I really got it. I still didn't like it. I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, I lost my home. My paycheck was illegally, cut off. It affected the quality of my life. My outstanding credit went south. It changed everything. But the best thing of all, I can say this today without any triggers, is that I have no malice, no hate toward the people, no malice about the incident. It was part of the journey. It took me a while. It didn't happen overnight. It didn't even happen in a year. I mean, it really took time and working on myself to let it go so that I don't get any triggers. Because I mean, how could it help anybody else? I mean, how could it even go into a company and teach them, how to have a sexual harassment-free environment, how to have a healthy, safe, respectful work environment if I got triggered all the time?
So let's go there a little bit. When you go to an employer or an organization, what is some of the basic advice you offer to help create an environment that's free of bullying and discrimination?
For the employer or for the employee?
The employers.
Okay. If it's the employer, it really involves finding out, what's going on in their workplace. I mean, if you walk in a workplace and you see a bunch of unhappy people, there's probably something going on. I mean, I've been an employee most of my life, and, I'm in my 50s now. So last 5 years I've worked for myself, but you start noticing things, and, I trust my gut, I trust my intuition, and I'm so very sensitive that I pick up on the energy of the work environment. I'm like, yeah, there's some unhappiness here. I mean, sure, it could be personal trauma, something going on in somebody's life. Then you talk to the leadership, and, as an HR consultant, I want to know what kind of training are they doing, because if there is discrimination, harassment like sexual harassment, such like that happens later on, and it's found out, especially, in a private company, corporation company, that there's no preventative training, then that person could be held liable, litigation. And in the private sector, if you get sued, boy, that could take your company out, I mean, especially if you're not a big company. Now it's mandatory that you have all this training in the federal agency, but all the time, federal agency management, you have employees that, act badly, because unfortunately the average discrimination case brought to an EEOC hearing takes 4 to 5 years. So management knows that, coworkers may know that it takes so long, and they continue harassing the person until they've run them off or made them miserable, and they have serious health conditions. And there's an exception to that, though. If you receive retaliation, if an employee could be also a manager too. When I say employee, I say it loosely. So if somebody files discrimination and they get retaliation, I'll give you an example. Okay, all of a sudden they get fired, unfairly fired. They should have had a promotion. They're passed over for a job they were qualified. They get an evaluation that's not fair, or something like that. There's so many ways you can retaliate against somebody. And if they file that, within 45 calendar days to the case manager, then retaliated cases get bumped up. It's like going to the emergency room. If you have a heart attack, you're going to be the first one to be seen by the doctor, rather than if you stubbed your toe. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. And what about employees, the end person, like say, and especially for men, because again, the way men are judged and looked at, it's got to be harder to say I'm being bullied. And I'm an adult man at work, and I feel like I'm being bullied and harassed. So what would you tell a guy going through that?
Okay, I'll give you the run through. Okay, like I said earlier, I grew up with 7 brothers and stepbrothers. I spent 20 years in the Air Force with a bunch of men. And so, I really understand men very well. And I know we've conditioned, I say we because I'm a woman, we have conditioned them from childhood to don't cry, stay tough, don't share your feelings. And I would say that's a bunch of crap, You are entitled to feel your feelings. You're entitled to be angry. You're entitled to stand up for yourself. You're entitled to tell the truth. And if you don't, I do believe that internally it's going to affect your health, your mental or physical health. So what I say to you, if you're being bullied, one of the first things is, depending on who that bully is, if you feel comfortable, you could talk to him or her and just say, stop bullying. I feel you're bullying me, whatever's going on, describe it. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can do it by email. And let me back up and say, if you do talk to him, I'm a big fan. I always train people to do it by email, because then you have an email trail. So you send an email to this, whoever it is, if it's supervisor, coworker, whatever, and just say, today you called me, I'm just making this up, a monkey in front of all my peers. And I did not like that. I felt mistreated. So, you kind of outline and spell it. Whether or not he or she responds back, the thing is that you have it in email. Okay. So if that stops the problem, great. Sometimes people don't realize how abrasive they can be. Okay. So if it doesn't stop, everyone has different reporting instructions. They may say, well, talk to your supervisor next, or they may say, reach out and, talk to your human resources department. So whatever the protocols, the rules are, do that. And again, it's okay to talk to your supervisor, the human resources department, but always follow.
All right. People
Young man, have some manners.
All right, I'm going to kick all these people out.
I was in the Marines.
Well, that was interesting. I do believe that was the first cyber attack on Real Men Feel. And first, I'm sorry, Dawn, that you were the unlucky participant during that. So I yeah, and I can't be sure of who that was, but since it was all fake names and anonymous people just flooding us with noise and porn, I'm gonna take an educated guess and say that it's people from MGTOW, which I've had a number of shows on and has gotten some bitter, angry people and some great people. But I keep getting requested for more people want to talk about MGTOW. The MGTOW people want to be talked about, but with stunts like that, no, it's not gonna happen. And it's actually rather fitting that again, that cyber attack happened while we're talking about bullying. Yeah, because that was just bullying. That those were gutless, anonymous human beings that are hiding out, thinking they're men and acting like babies. And that's not helping anybody get anywhere. So, with that, you were talking about what to do if someone were to stand up to bullying at the workplace. And so do you recall where you were before you were so brutally bullied?
I do. And I want to say something first before I address that. You are doing a great job, Andy, because that's why they tried to sabotage you, is you're doing good stuff to help men. And I'm so proud and I celebrate you. So anytime you have those disruptors that do things like that, you are doing a great job. So to answer your question, I was talking about, reaching out to the supervisor, the HR, following the protocols, and you can talk to them and tell them what's going on, be very, very objective, try to, keep your personal feelings out of it. I mean, just be very objective. This happened on this time, it's harassing, maybe it's causing mental or physical pain or something like that. Address that with them. You can do it verbally. But I tell you, everybody that you talk to, turn around with an email, clarify, and just say, hey, to the HR person or to the supervisor, hey, thanks for meeting with me today so I could discuss the bullying situation. Kind of clarify, spell it out, again. And the reason why you're setting up an email trail. And yes, you're definitely setting up a documentation trail, because the thing is, you could go back and write notes and say, well, I talked to HR today and here's what the HR said. But if you write a clarifying email, thanks for seeing me, talking about the bullying situation, describing the bullying situation. If they give you a solution like, well, we'll move the bully to another department or move you to a different department, put that in the email that you're grateful you'll have the opportunity to move, or you're concerned that your issue is not being addressed. And here's why you do that. Here's why you do email documentation, because handwritten notes won't matter. There's no attorney is going to want to take that on because it's not substantial proof. And when I settled 2 days before my hearing with the administrative judge, I settled off of pure documentation, and I had all these email trails where I reached out to, different management supervisor, went up the, as I would call it, chain of command supervisory, to the HR, reached out to everybody, and they mocked me and laughed at me. But when I brought in an attorney at the very end to be my voice box, because I was exhausted, I came out of the mental health ward, he took everything and he's like, wow. I said, I know, I mean, kind of bragging a little bit, but it's my specialty. When does an HR person write up their whole case and the attorney just has to read it, And, so yeah, email documentation, very, very, very important. And so if you got fired, let's say you complained about being bullied and you got fired, and then, if you qualify, you might be able to get unemployment compensation. Unemployment Security Office does that. If you qualify for it, you have to work so much time. And the thing is, sometimes the other side, the employer might challenge it and say, oh, no. Adam, I'm just making this name up. Adam was a bad boy. And that's why we let him go. And you have this email trail where you've reached out to the HR, the supervisor, and whether or not they respond or not, Andy, the thing is you're showing that you reached out and you're saying you're having a problem. So also, if you end up needing an attorney, hopefully it doesn't have to go to litigation, but if that's what it takes to stand up for yourself, an attorney is more likely to offer you a contingency. And a contingency, if you're not sure, what the listeners know what a contingency is where, like, the attorney may say, I'll agree to a contingency that I get 30% of the settlement or outcome, okay? They may ask for, some administrative fees for making copies and things like that. And so, and I like contingencies, because, the attorney has skin in the game, and, they obviously are making money. It's a business for them. Mm-hmm. So documentation can give you a better outcome. It can definitely lead to a better outcome. And let me just say quickly about witnesses. I don't care if somebody saw it. If they think they're going to get fired and maybe like they're a year from retiring or something like that, most attorneys want solid documentation. I know this because I work with attorneys. They want solid proof, and that email trail will save the day. It will definitely be helpful. Witnesses get scared, and they also change their story, and they forget.
Yeah, and for witnesses, but also primarily for the person speaking up. What do you say to people about who fear retaliation for speaking up?
Well, I'll tell you, I'll give you myself as an example. I'm like, oh, Lord, I mean, I'm a peaceful, easygoing person, very respected. And I knew as soon as I reported my supervisor's management, and I reported quite a few people because I caught on what was going on with the hiring, the illegal hiring and gotten the bullying. I knew I was going to get retaliated against. And so I don't know what the percentage is. It's probably, a possibility. It's pretty high. I know everybody's worked in the federal government that I'm aware of has gotten some kind of retaliation. So you have to pick your battles. Is it worth it? I've known people, oh my gosh, I only have a few years to retire. I don't want to lose this opportunity, to get retirement. You have to decide. And there's nothing shameful, nothing at all. I mean, I've had the most wonderful, sensitive men that are so kind, compassionate, decent human beings come to me, and they said, I can't take it anymore. It's just tearing me apart. And I said, what are your solutions? I mean, can you move to another job? Can you transfer to another place? So, there's so many options. And, I mean, I've become an entrepreneur, so I give thanks to the bullies because, I wouldn't be who I am today if I did not get that experience of being bullying. But it can be very hard on everybody, and everybody has different filters that they look at life at. I mean, like I was saying earlier, some people, oh my gosh, the supervisor gave me a dirty look. Oh, it's the end of the world, you know. And I mean, I get it. It's hard on them. And then the next person, it takes a whole lot. Like it took 18 months for me. You know, I mean, after all the things that happened to me, it wore me down. It wore me down, and I refused to go back there after the mental health ward. I'm like, I am not going back, you know, but I'm holding you accountable. So if you think that you're going to get retaliated, or, well, even if you don't know, you got to make that decision, go forward or become an entrepreneur, find another job, or stay silent. Mm. You've got to have a support team. And when I say that, you know, you may want to talk to an attorney, you want to maybe talk to an HR consultant outside of your department, I mean, outside of where you work, because a lot of times they're part of management too. And get some sound advice. You may need mental health care. I'm a big advocate for mental health care, and I know you are too. I know working around psychiatrists that 1 out of 4 people have mental health issues, and there's no shame in getting mental health care. And, you know, I remember being in the mental health ward, and people that came in, the folks that did the janitor work, and I worked in HR. I was in the VA hospital, and they recognized me, and I'm like, yes, you're seeing me. I'm in the mental health ward, and I'm good with it. So I hope you're good with it. If you're not, oh well, you know.
So is it, and like everything in life, there's no fine line. It's when to decide to speak up, to file a complaint, to send that email. It's just going to be different for each person.
I totally agree. I absolutely agree. You know, I mean, you know, how do I explain it? You know, I mean, I'm very sensitive to people's needs. I'm very empathetic to people. You know, I grew up in a humanitarian family, but there's a part of me also, you know, when I was in the Air Force, they called me the Ice Queen because I just carried myself with, I was very proud and formal, and that was what kept me out of trouble for being harassed by men and such, and women, let's face it, because women also harass women. And, you know, it took a while to take the armor off, but it's different for each and every person. They have to decide, is this the battle I want to choose, or do I want to move on to a better job or start my own business? It is a real unique choice.
Do you have any experience assisting men who are reporting a female superior for whatever issue? Because I imagine that has another degree of trouble to be believed by other people.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was working with my clients, I was working only with employees, and now, you know, I'm wrapping up with my last employee, and we'll only go out and do consulting in companies. But oh yeah, women can really be abusive, abrasive, and whoever calls them the weaker sex, I disagree. I mean, they can be very obnoxious, very abrasive. They can take advantage of men. I've seen it happen, and I've seen men just literally, you know, come unglued by it.
And is there any advice you can give to people, you know, that no one believes me? They've sent the email, or, you know, the company's HR person is just, you know, keep quiet, it'll go away, kind of. What's the next step?
Okay, so like I was saying before, bullying is not illegal, unfortunately, but discrimination is. And I would encourage people to go to that website. I'll repeat it one more time. It's eeoc.gov for Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And you can see the different protected classes. Again, you know, a lot of times people are bullied, they're discriminated against, you know, and so they can file an EEO. And if there's any kind of retaliation, they report it to the case manager assigned to them. And, you know, and they might have to, you know, stand the storm that comes ahead if there is retaliation, but they keep reporting it. And they seek, I highly suggest mental health care if needed. And, you know, I can tell you in the past, I know one person who saw a priest for help, and I'm not disagreeing with that. The only thing is, a priest cannot diagnose anxiety, cannot diagnose depression, you can't sleep at night, the physical conditions that are changing in your body because you're so stressed out, especially long-term stress. So I remember I kept encouraging this client, yes, that's great, see a priest, see a mentor, a spiritual leader, whoever you want to, but please, for your sake, to be able to claim duress, you have to see somebody who's qualified to diagnose that, and it's usually a mental health professional provider. So it's really important, and it's really important for that provider to tie in that you are going through retaliation, you're being bullied since you filed the EEO case. And the reason why you do that is if the mental health professional was just sitting there saying, well, Tom's having a hard time at work. He's very stressed at work. He can't sleep at night. He has all this stress. He has all this depression, but that doesn't tie back to that person filing EEO charges for discrimination because maybe they're over 40 or they're gay or a person that's transgender. And a lot of even mental health professionals, I've worked and trained them, and they're just blown away. They're like, oh, I didn't know that. I said, well, here's what happens. If you end up going to a hearing, of course, civil court case, and the other side, the other attorneys is probably going to come back, yeah, work is stressful. Oh, but we know that Tom was going through a divorce. Of course he was stressed out. So you never, you make sure everything is solid. It ties back to EEO. Does that make a whole lot of sense?
Yep.
It's so simple, but people don't realize it. And mental health professionals have to be aware if they really want to help their people and empower them. Sure, they do so much to help them and, validating their concerns. But if they're documenting all the mental health stress that's going on with them, they have to tie it back to, he filed an EEO case, he's now getting retaliation, and every time that mental health provider is making records, that again tying it back to the EEO charges and such. And he can also, the provider can also say that the person's being bullied, because sometimes the employee can ask for workers' compensation for stress. Hey, I know people who have actually gone to the media and didn't even go the EEO route, and they got a fair outcome. So I won't use any names or anything like that, but it's important to have everything solidly documented so that you have a possibility of having a good outcome.
Have individuals or companies that have recognized individuals ever come to you when they realize they're the aggressor, the bullier, the harasser, and come to you for help or advice on how to deal with that?
I've not. I wish. No.
They don't usually self-identify and ask for help.
No, I've never had anybody come and say, I'm a bully. But what I have had is, oh my goodness, we need you. Oh goodness, we had an employee talk about a woman's breast. Oh my God, we're worried about being sued. Because our private sector, a company owner can lose his entire business. Litigation, duress charges, things like that. In the federal government, it's the taxpayers' money. It doesn't come out of who bullied you in the federal government. They'll do a settlement. They'll offer a settlement, but the thing is, it doesn't come out of their pocket. But in private sector, it could ruin the reputation of that company financially and embarrass them. And it can also embarrass the federal agency. But again, the big difference of where the money comes from, and serious time in being interviewed, being investigated, interrogatories, admissions, paperwork. It is an absolute administrative nightmare for the person who files the charges at times, and for the person on the other end, if it's employer. But I wish more people would come forward and say, we have a bullying problem, and I'm the bully.
Yeah. So it sounds like in corporate America, in modern day society, however you want to wrap it up, the thing that drives companies or organizations to want to be free of bullying is just fear of lawsuits.
That's probably one of the biggest concerns with corporations, private sector, because you hear about these $1 million suits, $300,000 duress, people getting that money. I mean, think about it, $300,000, $1 million, unless you're a really, really big corporation, that could shut you down, have a big impact on the bottom line. So, and tie you up for years with this litigation, because they're not quick and they're not easy.
Yeah. So it's not, oh, I guess I'm hopeful of the situation where, because it's the right thing, we're doing this, but no, it's really because we don't want to get sued and lose everything. We're going to have someone come in and give us better HR training and make sure we treat each other with respect.
Yeah, I mean, if they get a litigation suit and it's found out by the EEOC they've not done training, like I said earlier, the employer can really get in a lot of trouble, and you don't want to get in trouble with the EEOC, because it's going to be in the archives. It's going to be embarrassing for the company. And it's going to be embarrassing for the people who work there. I mean, they're not going to want to say, I work at XYZ company and just had this horrible lawsuit. How embarrassing, because, you don't want your company in the news. You absolutely don't.
Cool. So you host a podcast called The Empowered Whistleblower.
I do.
What sort of topics do you cover in your show?
Well, that's the name of my first book. And when I decided, and it was asked to do a podcast with my friend Krista Walker, she does Mental Health News Radio. There's about 30 podcasters under her, under Mental Health News. I remember the day she contacted me and we said, we need a strong woman to talk about bullying, discrimination. I laughed and I said, okay, I'll do it. And so the subject matter is about bullying and discrimination, but in a very, very broad sense. I mean, we talk about solutions for children who are being bullied in schools, people in the workplace. I bring on what I'll just categorize as healers. We talk about resiliency. I brought on employment attorneys. I've brought on people who've been their own worst bullies. I've interviewed Erin Brockovich. She's out there doing advocacy where people are bullying, the people with bad water. So it's very broad. If I can have anybody that can bring inspiration, empowerment, maybe a bullying story where somebody's not only survived but thrive. So anything that's a resource, empowerment to help people. And this is also for employers too. If there's a company that's doing things right, those are the kind of people I definitely want to celebrate and interview. And also, talk about their books, their events, and, bring healthy, safe work and school environments out to the public.
Cool. And now in your consultancy work, you no longer deal with individuals. You now only work with corporations, with employers.
Well, I'm finishing up my last case with an attorney. I basically wrote and documented the whole entire case from the beginning to the end, and that gets very expensive. And the employee made extra money, I should say, or made really good money. So after this one, I am only going to do consulting, podcasting, getting my second book out there, which is very comprehensive about solutions to workplace bullying. It is directly intended for employees, but in fairness, I'm also going to write about how companies can also stand up to bullying and solutions, because it's only fair. I know that there are good managers and supervisors that want healthy and safe environments. And what happens, Andy, is the supervisors don't document up the information correctly, and then they get lawsuits because they fire the person. And so I think it's important on both sides that we all work together so that we can, feel safe. And people, the night before they have to go to work, they're not having a stomach ache or headache because they're like, oh my God, I don't want to go to work. Oh, I hate my job. I hate it.
Cool.
That's my advocacy, and that's my mission. That's my work.
Excellent. And it's unfortunately much needed.
Yeah, I wish I wasn't needed. I mean, isn't that terrible to say? But I'm very happy and understand this is my life's soul's work to help people, help employees, children, and adults, and bring us all together so we can make the place a better world.
Excellent. So what's the best way for people to get in touch with you, to learn more about you?
Well, everything's on my website, workplacebullyingsupport.com. You'll be able to link on to the Empowered Whistleblower podcast, or you can go to Blog Talk Radio and just put in the Empowered Whistleblower, and it'll have information about my book, all my social media and such, and how to contact me.
Excellent, excellent. And wherever you're listening to this podcast, or if you're watching it on YouTube or anywhere else, go to the show notes at Good Men Project or realmenfeel.org, and we'll have links to all the various ways you can connect with Dawn and check out her podcast and books, and keep yourself from being bullied and know what to do about it. And if you discover you are the bully, you do something about that too. And
watch out, bullies.
yeah, if you self-identify, right? But I mean, I can own, like, I definitely have bullied people. I think if every human has at some point.
I have to agree. There's been times I've been a little too assertive with people. They might have needed, me to be a little assertive with them, but I think we all have the capacity to be kind, empathetic, passionate, but we are humans. Sometimes we can be, have a little bully in us. I'm not perfect, and but I try to be more mindful of the words that come out of my mouth and how I behave with everyone.
And to go back to one of your first pieces of advice, if no one addresses the small infractions, or hey, you realize how harsh you're coming off, or whatever it may be, like, oh, then I can't know that. So
yeah, I think it's important to speak up and to speak up, tell the person that you want to get along with them, especially if they're a coworker. I mean, it's easier to work with them, but you find their behavior or how they talk to you a little abrasive, and see if you can meet in the middle. And if you can't, you may have to address it to higher up. They may bring in a mediator. They may bring in an HR consultant. They may have their own internal processes. But if you don't say something and it starts eating at your soul, I mean, the next thing you know, you're having all these health problems, and you're missing work. And that's a big problem for employers if they don't have safe and healthy, respectful work environments. You start having people take, if they qualify for the Family Medical Leave Act, they're out, could be out for up to 12 weeks, workers' compensation for stress, them using sick days or annual days. Hey, affects the bottom dollar, it affects production, and it also affects the people who see the bullying. The bystanders are greatly affected, the morale's affected. There's so many things that happen when bullying and discrimination happens, and it just doesn't need to happen, and we don't have to put up with it. There are solutions.
Excellent. Yeah, here's to not putting up with it and knowing what to do about it. Cool. So I thank you very much for being here. I know I learned a lot. I hope all of our listeners did as well. And once again, Real Men Feel is brought to you by the Good Men Project. Visit goodmenproject.com for more conversations that no one else is having. And despite sabotage, we will talk to you again in all of our future shows. And feel free to reach out to Dawn. Check out her podcast, The Empowered Whistleblower. And, wherever you are, speak up for yourselves, because you do have the power.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks again for listening, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Real Men Feel. Until next week, visit realmenfeel.org or the Real Men Feel Facebook group and share what you thought of this episode. Please give this podcast a review on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you are discovering Real Men Feel. Reach out to us at realmenfeel@gmail.com. Show us some love by visiting realmenfeel.org/swag or digitaltipjar.com/realmenfeel. Learn more about Andy Grant at theandygrant.com and Appio Hunter at appiohunter.com.